countdown, we have the secret tunnel system. I know I've talked about this before, but Walt Disney created a whole underground tunnel system for the characters to have a break, and it's for them to secretly get around the park without walking everywhere in costume. This way, this all preserves the magical feel of Disney. But some employees shared what really goes on down there. First off, they said that the tunnel system is fairly confusing, and on a number of occasions, people have gotten lost down there. One employee said that they had just got a job playing a Disney mascot character and went down into the tunnels and had no clue where to go. He went to ask other employees for help, but since he was new, they kind of just brushed him off. Another employee revealed that some of the cast members like to get it on during their breaks down in the tunnel system. So while you're up above having fun, they're down below having fun. Just in a different way, if you understand what I'm getting at. Coming in at number 9, we have the waiting lines. But before I go any further, if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. I think the one flaw about Disney are its lines. Seriously, nobody's got time for that. But a couple of years ago, a huge scandal broke out involving Disney and their waiting lines. Basically, rich families were paying tour guides that have access to these special passes for the disabled. Basically, with this pass, you get brought right to the top of the line because Disney wants guests with disabilities to have a great time. But wealthy, able people were abusing this, which is absolutely sickening. Can't believe people were actually doing this just to scam the system. Moving on to number 8, we have the overnighter. For this next point, let's move back along to Disney's tunnel system. So remember I talked about how new employees often get lost down in the tunnels? Well, there's this creepy urban legend about this happening to a new employee. So he finished his shift and went down to the tunnels to change. As he was making his way out, the lights in the tunnel shut off, and he was in the complete darkness. Now, he had trouble already finding the exit with the lights on. Now with the lights off, it was even more difficult. He ended up wandering around the tunnel system for hours before collapsing from exhaustion. He ended up staying there overnight. His coworkers found him in the morning. He was freezing cold and super scared. So now this story is kind of used to scare new employees. In our 7th spot, we have the suspicious death. So in 2012, a man's body was found near the Mickey and Friends parking structure at Disneyland. Police just assumed the man took his own life, but no witnesses ever reported seeing this man jump. Now what's weird is that I tried to search more into this case, but I couldn't find anything. We don't know what truly happened to this man and how he passed away, which is a little suspicious to me. In our 6th spot, we have Yes Man. So this story was shared by a former Disney employee that worked near the Indiana Jones ride. So his job was to dress up as an adventurer and just stand around. But he said he was often attacked by kids, and Disney told him that he just kind of had to take it. So these kids would often be super psyched to go on this ride, and so they were in costume and had plastic weapons. He said on a number of occasions, kids would come up to him and literally whip him with their weapons. Or he would get asked to duel, and he always had to say yes. So kids would just be jabbing him with their plastic swords. Yeah, that's not a job I would like. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Winnie the Pooh gets sued. I thought that was so clever. Like, I was typing that and I came up with that and I'm like, pat on the back. Good job, Lindsay. Anyway, in 1978, a guest at the park sued Disney and a cast member, claiming that the cast member playing Winnie the Pooh slapped their daughter. In 1981, their case was brought to court, and the cast member showed up in the Winnie the Pooh costume. He argued that their daughter was tugging on his costume, he turned around and accidentally knocked her over. And then in court, he proceeded to show the jury his costume's arms, saying it's not even physically possible for him to do that in the first place, you know, with his little limited movement. In the end, Disney ended up winning, but still, what a wild day at court. And I love how he showed up in costume. Coming in at number 4, we have the Deadly Ride. On June 26, 2007, a female guest passed away on the Rock and Roller Coaster avec Aerosmith ride at Disneyland Paris. After the ride was done, people noticed her unconscious. The paramedics arrived, but failed to revive her. Sadly, she passed away. Now, in articles, it said that the ride wasn't going to reopen until they found out how and why she passed. But there's no follow-up articles outlining what went wrong on the ride. And it's not like she was 80 years old and had health conditions. No, she was fairly young. I just wish Disney let us know what happens, because the ride has been up and running ever since, but no official statement was ever released. In our third spot, we have Disney's jail. Did you know that Disney has its own specific jail for criminals? Yeah, if you're caught breaking any of Disney's rules, you'll be escorted to Disney jail. Employees describe it as an underground room with bars on the windows. There's no bright colors or Mickeys decorating the area. Now, what causes you to be sent to Disney jail? Well, if you get too rowdy or too intoxicated at the park, if you smoke certain substances at the park, or if you're caught shoplifting. You get the picture. Disney is actually very strict when it comes to this. People caught shoplifting aren't even given a warning sometimes. Instead, they're just sent straight to their jail. From there, you can be fined, kicked out of the park, banned from ever coming back to the park, or all of the above. In our second spot, we have Blake Lively's arrest. Believe it or not, but actress Blake Lively was once sent to Disney jail. Yeah, so basically her and her brother both snuck into Disneyland's park. What they did is put hairspray on the stamps of somebody that came out of the park and then put their hands together, and that transferred the stamp. Then they got to go in the park for free. Except Blake and her brother were caught by an undercover Disney cop and sent to Disney jail. I'm telling you, Disney has way too many undercover cops, like they're everywhere. Which is a good thing for safety, but also kind of a bad thing because, you know, they're watching your every move. And in our number one spot, we have the battle. This story comes from a Disney employee that worked at a store at the Disney park near the Indiana Jones ride. One time, 30 kids ran into the store and each grabbed a toy sword from the bin, you know, so that they could be just like Indiana Jones. But then the kids started attacking the two workers in the store with their swords. And obviously the workers aren't allowed to like yell at the kids or panic or fight back, so they just let the kids attack them until their parents noticed and called them off. By then, he says his arms were already covered in cuts and bruises and he was bleeding. Yeah, maybe those weapons should be like placed behind the counter or something, you know, so things like that don't happen. Or maybe Disney should just have a better policy, I don't know.
Coming in at number 10 of our Disney Urban Legends, Walt Disney haunts Disneyland, California. Walt Disney opened the original Disneyland in 1955 and he loved the place. In fact, saying he loved the place is a huge understatement. He doted on the place. He spent the majority of his time there until his death in 1966. Walt had an apartment above the fire station on Main Street. When he was in residence, it was said he always kept a lamp burning in the window so everyone knew he was there. When he died, the lamp was switched off. Eerily though, it seemed that the lamp would have a way of turning itself back on. One day, a staff member was cleaning the apartment when she heard a voice that said, "I'm still here." From that day on, Disney's lamp has kept on burning in the window as a mark of respect and acknowledgement for his ghost. Coming in at number 9, there are real skeletons on Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean ride. So according to legend, real human skeletons are used throughout the Pirates of the Caribbean rides, and this is exactly what Walt Disney ordered. I guess this kind of makes riding on the scary themed log ride even spookier, knowing that you're surrounded by actual skeletons. Some people even say that Walt Disney's own skeleton is hidden amongst the bodies on the ride. Now I actually do know the truth behind this creepy urban legend. Like most stories that have been passed down over the years, there is some truth to it. When the ride first opened in 1967, 1 year after Disney's death, fake skeletons looked pretty rubbish, well, like pretty fake. So in the planning and building stage, Walt Disney wanted real skeletons to be used. He never got to see the finished product, but true to his wishes, real skeletons were indeed used. Eventually though, they were replaced. Not only was it kind of morbid to have a bunch of dead people on a Disney ride, fake skeletons started looking a lot better. Now the only real human skull that exists is on the headboard of a bed at Disney World in Florida. This is really weird because on this ride they never had fully human skeletons anyway, like in California, so. Also Disney are telling us that they're now fake skeletons, but who knows? Coming into number 8, there is a ghost hitchhiker on Space Mountain. Legend has it that a red-haired man who died on the ride still enjoys a spin today. The man, often dubbed Mr. One Way, is said to have died in the 1970s whilst on the attraction. It is said that he sits next to single riders, but by the time the ride ends, there is absolutely no sign of him. For those that don't see him, they say they can feel him behind them if there is an empty seat at the back. There have been a number of reports of the Hitcher, and he may or may not have been caught on camera a couple of times. Check this out. Coming into number 7, we have the mysterious urban legend of Mowgli's Palace. So this is kind of an urban legend creepypasta surrounding an abandoned Disney attraction. Redditor Slimebeast, aka Christopher Howard Wolf, wrote a post about an illicit visit to the grounds of a defunct Disney theme park in Northern Carolina. So allegedly, Disney wanted to open a Jungle Book resort in Emerald Isle, North Carolina. From the very beginning, it seemed to be fraught with issue. The locals did not want Disney to buy the land. Nonetheless, it was bought and primed for opening, when all of a sudden, the project just stopped. The park was closed, employees were dismissed, the whole place was shut up and hushed up. According to the urban legend, a dude goes to explore, camera in hand. He finds the place in a state of expected disarray. He finds the words "abandoned by Disney" graffitied in a number of areas. Eventually, the intrepid explorer finds staff areas and deduces that the place was not just simply abandoned, it was evacuated. It is then the explorer finds mascot costumes. The only thing is, they're actually alive. Or, it seems that they were. The costumes have skeletons inside of them. As the explorer tries to escape, he said a Mickey Mouse chased him. While there have been some alleged aerial images posted of the secret park, it turns out that it's just a really scary creepypasta. There is actually an abandoned Disney water park that you can still visit if you're an urban explorer these days, but I'm presuming that none of the mascots are alive and running amok there. Coming into number 6, we have the legend of the sacrificed Snow White. A story submitted on Reddit 4 years ago really gives me the chills. Posted in the No Sleep subreddit, Redditor Bletch1994 shared his experience of working for the Magic Kingdom. Upvoted over 2,000 times, the poster kept his real name anonymous. He said that 99% of all the work at Walt Disney World goes on after the show is over. He was working construction on the park for a while, mainly working on the Seven Dwarfs Mine train ride, which was set to open up. Long Reddit story short, the guy said that a lot of the crew were very sketchy about being alone in various places. They had to take their lunch breaks at 3 AM, and one day the guy forgot his lunch bag and headed back to get it. But he stumbled across what can only be described as a sacrificial cult scene. Robed figures were crowded around a Snow White character who was bound, gagged, and crying. The guy said a half moon was carved into her forehead and she was cut by the figures. The guy basically said he was so freaked out that he turned and ran. Now the next day he told his older foreman what he had seen. This man had worked at the park for nearly 4 decades. The foreman told him that he had seen a lot of this kind of thing in his time at Disney, and that the land was brought from a lot of groups who required special payment in the form of blood sacrifices. He urged the construction worker to never discuss what he'd seen, mentioning that the executives at Club 33 were more powerful than he could ever imagine. Now he finishes the Reddit post by saying that he quit right there on the spot. Good. Coming into number 5, we have the legend of the Platform D bellhop on the Tower of Terror. In 2007, Walt Disney's Hollywood Studios Tower of Terror took its final plunge, but what will happen to the ghost of the bellhop said to haunt the Twilight Zone? Legend has it that one of Disney's cast members who operated the ride as a bellhop dropped dead one day on their shift. The Tower of Terror has 4 elevators: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. The bellhop died on Platform Delta as he loaded guests onto the attraction. Now it seems that the man may never have actually clocked out for his shift. Disney cast members test the rides before they open to the public, and some have reported someone else sitting with them on the elevator when testing from Delta. There have been pictures of a ghost-like figure sitting in the back of the ride. Now again, a photo was taken after hours on the tower, and some people have spotted a truly ghostly figure. The ride is currently being torn down to make way for a Marvel attraction, so who knows what will happen to the ghost. Perhaps it will make him angry. This is a very popular one at number 4. Disney is cryogenically frozen. So I don't really know where this one comes from, but a lot of people seem to believe it. When the topic of freezing comes up, a lot of people cite Walt Disney as a main contender. Disney died of lung cancer in December of 1966, aged just 65. The urban legend seems to come from a comment made by the president of the California Cryogenic Society in the 1970s. Bob Nelson told the LA Times that Walt Disney wanted to be frozen. This led to Disney's daughter Diana making a public statement to target the claims. She said, "There is absolutely no truth to the rumor that my father, Walt Disney, wished to be frozen. So if he had been frozen and we eventually found a cure for lung cancer, a whole new generation could enjoy Disney movies. I wonder how it would feel to be woken up after 50 years of being frozen. I guess ask Austin Powers." Again, we have a very popular urban legend at number 3. Disney used mind control on kids watching his movies because the Illuminati told him to do so. There have been so many Disney conspiracy theories out there that Walt Disney wanted to turn kids into sex-crazed teenagers. Movies including Aladdin, The Lion King, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Ariel the Little Mermaid, and The Rescuers have all been accused of trying to brainwash kids with non-PG content. So-called truth seekers have tried to expose Disney for his sexual content, saying there is sex written in the sky in The Lion King, that the genie in Aladdin tells teenagers to take off their clothes, and of course there's some classic Jessica Rabbit vajay. Some say that Disney wanted to sexualize children from a young age as the Illuminati wanted them to be targets of abuse. Disney's Club 33 has also been amid paedophile ring claims, but we'll get to that later. I personally don't know about this one, but I don't know, maybe the urban legend is true and we're all sex crazed because we watched Pocahontas once. Coming in at number 2, urban legend has it that the It's a Small World dolls move and switch places. I think we can all agree that the It's a Small World ride is pretty creepy. It just is. Tiny dolls scare me at the best of times, but singing tiny dolls? La! It's also one of the oldest Disney attractions, which somehow to me makes the whole thing creepier. Anyway, legend has it that the dolls come alive when no one is looking. How do we know? Well, it seems they have often been found in switch positions. Employees at Disney have mentioned it on several occasions, with many way too freaked out to go near the ride. Some even go as far as to say the dolls keep singing after hours. Author Ridley Pearson is one of the more high-profile people who swears he saw the doll move. He was on a VIP after hours tour and is convinced that they have a life of their own. How can they keep singing when the electricity's been shut off? I don't know. Clearly they're evil. I think I can tell that by looking at their creepy little doll faces though. Ah! I wonder what happens if you play It's a Small World backwards. I bet it's like, take off your clothes, teenagers once again. The genie's anything to go by. Finally, coming into number 1 of our top 10 creepy Disney urban legends, we have Club 33 is the Illuminati headquarters. There have been a lot of links between Walt Disney and the Illuminati. Loads. When Walt Disney was alive, many people accused him of being part of the Freemasons, a group that is constantly linked to the Illuminati. There definitely seems to be something shifty going on at Club 33, the exclusive clubhouse in Disneyland, California. It is the only place in Disneyland that serves alcohol. It actually seems that these days, clubhouses exist across all of the parks. Officially, the original club was intended for use by Disneyland's corporate sponsors and industry VIPs. Now, the original location is somewhat hidden in New Orleans Square, and you can only gain membership by invite. Paul McCartney and Elton John are said to be members, although a lot of people are totally convinced that something very suspicious and culty is going on behind those doors. Remember the Snow White point from earlier on in the video? Like, maybe these are the people slashing up Disney characters for some kind of blood sacrifice. I don't know, for me, this is definitely just an urban legend.
Starting off this countdown, we have the lifeguards. So I came across this TikTok and apparently he used to be a lifeguard at Disney.
This is what Disney throws in the water to test their lifeguards. But what they don't tell you is that the lifeguards are told that they have to be constantly watching the water as if somebody's purposely trying to drown their child, because people apparently do that. Disney noticed that people would go there to drown their children on purpose so that they could sue Disney and they could get rid of their child at the same time. So Disney lifeguards are trained to look for that.
That is absolutely horrifying if he's telling the truth. It must be super stressful being a lifeguard at Disney. Like, their water parks and wave pools are always packed. It's so sad if that has actually happened. In our 9th spot, we have the deaths. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up. You know the drill, because it really helps us out. Also, if you haven't already, go check out the other parts of the series. So Disney is very, very protective of its image. It wants to maintain that it's a safe and family-friendly place. So they claim that no one has ever died at their park, which is clearly false. Tons of accidents have happened at Disney World and Disneyland. Both visitors and workers have lost their lives at Disney. But their claim is 100% true. Now, you're probably thinking, how is this possible? So it turns out what Disney does is when someone does die at the park, employees have to remove the body from the property before pronouncing them dead. That means no one technically died at the park, only outside of the park's gates. They do this all so that families feel safe coming there, because if no one dies there, then clearly it's super safe. But still, this is pretty sketchy if you ask me. In our 8th spot, we have the injuries. Now, if you work for Disney as one of the characters and you get injured on the job, well, guess what? You can't receive medical assistance until you're out of the public's eye. This is just another crazy rule that Disney has. You have to stay in character no matter what. They all do this to preserve the illusion of Disney and magic. I mean, how horrifying would it be if all of a sudden Mickey rips off his head and starts like gushing blood in front of kids? Now, one worker was told before accepting a job as Water Goofy on a Disney cruise, he had to agree that if for some reason he started drowning, he had to be carried away before lifeguards could remove his costume and perform CPR. So he could literally be dying in the costume and need medical attention right away, but Disney won't allow that. Moving on to number 7, we have the repairs. Ever notice how Disney is pretty much always in great condition? I mean, some of the rides are super old, but they don't look it. Well, according to a former Disney employee, every night workers go around the park touching up any and everything. During the day, the workers note if there's any graffiti anywhere in the park or if there's paint chipping anywhere. They write it down and let the night shift workers know, and then they go around fixing it all. I mean, I just took in that I've never seen graffiti at Disney, and that's exactly why. But also, it's a very tedious job. They have to go around the full park and get it all done before the park reopens in the morning. Moving on to number 6, we have the fire accident. So this next story comes from a Disney employee that worked as an outdoor vendor. One night while watching a fireworks show, Tinkerbell got stuck on the wire above the castle since she had been hoisted up because she was flying in the air. But her wire was stuck, and she almost burned to death up there. There was a whole Indiana Jones portion of the show, and in it they had large fireballs. Well, they couldn't stop the show to get Tinkerbell down, so they kind of just left her there and turned off her spotlight so no one could see what was going on, and then they prayed for the best. But like I said before, it's a risk you take while working for Disney. You know, you could be dying and they're not gonna save your life if it interferes with their show. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the cursed ride. Believe it or not, but there is a ride at Disney that all workers believe is cursed. This is the Matterhorn. First off, this ride is responsible for the most fatal and non-fatal incidents. In 1964, a teen on the ride stood up in the bobsled and then died after being thrown out from the ride. Then another time, the ride caught on fire, injuring a family in their sled. And another visitor died after she was launched out of her seat and then hit by another bobsled. More on this later. You think they would have fixed this ride after the first couple of deaths, but no, they blame it on a curse instead. They should just kind of look into the safety of that ride, because I don't know if it's that safe. In our 4th spot, we have the Death on Space Mountain. Okay, this one is pretty dark. So in 1979, a woman died on the Space Mountain ride. She was only 31 at the time. So basically, after the ride was done, this woman didn't feel well at all, but she couldn't get out of her seat by herself. The ride operators were trying to get her out of her seat, but the other workers weren't notified, so they ended up sending her on the ride again. This time, when the ride was done, she was completely unconscious. It literally put her in a coma. She passed away a week later. Now, technically, this wasn't Disney's fault. I mean, part of it was. They had a lawsuit filed against them, but it was dismissed because apparently while on the ride, a tumor dislodged from her heart and then traveled to her brain. Yeah, I know, that's super scary. In our 3rd spot, we have the ghost of Walt Disney. So for those of you who don't know, Disney had a secret apartment. It was located just above the firehouse on Main Street, USA. This apartment was built so that he could watch the guests enjoy his creation without being overwhelmed by the crowds. Now, his apartment was so secretive that him and his family and special guests were the only ones allowed in there. In fact, photographers were rarely allowed inside. As a result, there are hardly any photos of Mr. Disney and his family in this place. Well, after the passing of Walt Disney in 1966, cast members decide to place a small lamp at the window. They keep the light on to symbolize that Disney's spirit is still alive at Disneyland. And this may be indeed true, because it's said that his ghost still haunts his apartment. A number of employees have seen Disney while cleaning the apartment. Apparently one worker was in there and then the lights started flickering on and off. Another worker said she heard a voice say, "Don't forget, I am still here." And that's when she probably quit, because that's terrifying. In our second spot, we have Dolly's Dip. So in 1984, Regina, otherwise known as Dolly Young, was riding on the Matterhorn when her seatbelt came undone. She was then thrown from the ride and hit and killed by another bobsled. Now, there's still much debate as to how her seatbelt came undone. Some say that she unbuckled it to help her children who were in another car. Others think that the seatbelt just wasn't buckled properly in the first place. Either way, this accident was super tragic. But that's not all. Now Disney employees claim that Dolly's spirit haunts the ride. The area in which she died is now called Dolly's Dip, and employees hate going there by themselves. Those that do have claimed to feel like someone is watching them. Others say that the lights in Dolly's Dip never work properly anymore. Now everyone kind of just avoids that area at all costs. And in our number one spot, we have the tragic accident. So this story was shared on Reddit by a man who once worked at Disney as a VIP tour guide. So he was in the city hall when two women came in with two little girls. One of the girls was in a wheelchair, the other girl looked very depressed. Both of them had cuts and bruises all over them. The two women with them were nurses from the hospital that the girls had just been to. They were there to ask for a refund for the girls' tickets. Now, here's where the story gets very sad. So apparently the girls had been with their mom and dad at Epcot, but on their way home they got in a really bad car accident. They both lost their parents in the crash. So the nurses had come to try and get a refund for the tickets so that the girls could get money to try and go home. Now, how dark is that? That's extremely sad. Starting off this countdown, we have the terrible situation. So according to this Disney employee, this incident took place on the 4th of July in 1995. On that day, there was a power glitch and all of the rides shut down at the same time. So all of them had to be evacuated, but that led to a pileup at the park. Everyone started panicking and trying to get out, especially this one guest who pulled out something sharp from their bag and started guests so that they could get out of the park. Thankfully, I don't think anyone died that day, but still, what a traumatic thing that they had to go through. In our ninth spot, we have the injuries. One Disney employee shared on Reddit how rough it truly is to be a Disney mascot character. I mean, not only do they have to wear those costumes out in the blazing heat, they also have to deal with whiny and bratty children and parents. And apparently, a lot of the time, they get injured. One time, a family attacked Pluto and pushed the character into the fountain. The employee suffered from a broken arm. In another instance, a woman playing Mickey Mouse suffered a bad neck injury after a guest kept patting her on the head. This caused the head to fall down and strain her neck. And the costumes themselves weigh 47 pounds. They're blamed for at least 282 injuries. So maybe just be gentle with them. But before I go any further, if you guys are liking this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Come on, you know the drill, because it really helps us out. In our 8th spot, we have the working conditions. It's no shock that landing a job at Disney is very, very hard. Every year they receive thousands upon thousands of applications. But here's the thing, if you do land a job at Disney, you have to be very, very careful because you can easily be fired. Here's a list of ways you could get fired. For starters, you could get fired for coming to work looking unacceptable. Workers always have to have their facial hair neat and trimmed. Their nails always have to be trimmed back, and they can't have any visible piercings. They are super strict about this all. You can also get fired if you post something bad on social media about the company, if you're a face actor and you gain weight, or if you talk while in your costume. I mean, the last one I get. I don't want to be hugging Winnie the Pooh and then hear some old man talking. Anyways, this one employee said that he was fired from Disney after being caught eating a piece of popcorn popcorn that fell on their shirt. That's insane. I would be fired instantly if that's the case, because I make a mess while I'm eating and then I just always eat the crumbs off my shirt. Sorry, not sorry. It's just scary how controlling Disney is over their employees. Moving on to number 7, we have the Disney point. Here's another ridiculous thing that Disney employees must do. No matter what, they always have to point with their index finger and middle finger. They can't point with just one finger because that's thought to be rude. So whenever they're showing people directions or something, they always have to point with 2 fingers. In fact, you could be fired if you're caught pointing with 1 finger. Coming in at number 6, we have the bullying. Now, working at Disney is often thought of as a dream job. There are so many characters that aspire to be a character at Disney. Hate to break it to you, but apparently the work environment is fairly toxic. According to multiple employees, there's a lot of bullying that takes place behind the scenes, especially when it comes to the character actors. So there is a sense of hierarchy there. The girls that played the recent popular Disney princesses like Anna and Elsa are thought of as top tier. They're at the top of this Disney social pyramid. Then we have the actors that play the older characters like Snow White, Mary Poppins, Gaston, Peter Pan, you get it. And at the bottom of the pyramid are the mascot characters. Apparently the mascot characters are treated so poorly by other cast members. So yeah, I don't know if I would ever want to work there. Like, I like teamwork and cooperation, not rivalry. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the water. So if you've been to Disney, then you know some rides are surrounded by water. According to employees, that water, although it may not look like that, is extremely polluted and filthy. From people throwing up in there, to trash, to animal poop, it's got it all. And I don't know how often it gets clean. If it looks clean to them, then it's good enough. So maybe think twice before getting on a ride that sprays you with water. In our 4th spot, we have the costumes. So in my last video, I talked about how some of the bigger and elaborate mascot costumes can't really get washed. So instead, they just spray it with disinfectant. Well, here's a fact that will gross you out even more. Back in the day, cast members at Walt Disney had to obviously share costumes, but they also had to share undergarments. Until 2001, each costume had their own Disney-sanctioned undergarments that they would have to share with each other. So gross. Because of that, a lot of workers were passing around STIs and STDs and stuff. So that's when they stopped sharing underwear. Like, that is highly unsanitary, and I'm glad that's not a thing anymore. Moving on at number 3, we have the alligator problem. So once upon a time, Disney had a really bad alligator problem. They still kind of do. But obviously, they didn't want park guests to worry about this, so they kept downplaying this problem. From 2006 to 2015, 220 alligators had to be removed from Disney World. Then from 2015 to 2016, there was a massive increase of gators at the park. Since Disney is connected to waterways that intersect with lakes and rivers, alligators have an easier access to Disney than they admitted. That's when Disney was exposed for downplaying the seriousness of their alligator problem. Now, they are taking it seriously and have increased their safety measures. Coming in at number 2, we have the dead body. So here's a fun fact. There is a dead body at Disneyland. Well, kind of. Let me explain. So according to employees, back in the day when the Pirates of the Caribbean ride was being built, they decided to use real human bones. Why? Because they thought that the fake bones looked too thick. Didn't look real enough, so they brought in real ones. Apparently, they got these bones from UCLA Medical School. The real bones were used for a while, then eventually they were swapped out for fake ones. But the skull and crossbones featured in the ride behind a skeleton lounging in bed are still real. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Cursed Ride. Now, according to multiple different employees, the Haunted Mansion ride is actually cursed. So it all started back in the day when a visitor died on the ride. At one point, he stood up to try and reach a part of the attraction, but ended up falling off the ride and plummeted to his death. Other eerie things have happened there that have led them to believe the ride is cursed. Like how in Disneyland Paris, a worker was found dead at their Phantom Manor ride, which is basically like the Haunted Mansion ride at Disney World. His body was found 2 days later after his death. His cause of death was apparently electrocution. Still, they think this is all because of the Haunted Mansion ride curse. To make matters worse, the ride uses an authentic 14th century spellbook containing real spells. So yeah, maybe this curse has something to do with that.